"Well, Stephen," said Bounderby, in his windy manner, "what's this I hear? What have these pests of the earth been doing to you? Come in, and speak up." It was into the drawing-room that he was thus bidden. A tea-table was set out, and Mr. Bounderby's young wife, and her brother, and a great gentleman from London, were present. To whom Stephen made his obeisance, closing the door and standing near it, with his hat in his hand. "This is the man I was telling you about, Harthouse," said Mr. Bounderby. The gentleman he addressed, who was talking to Mrs. Bounderby on the sofa, got up, saying in an indolent way, "Oh really," and dawdled to the hearthrug where Mr. Bounderby stood. "Now," said Bounderby, "speak up." After the 4 days he had passed, this address fell rudely and discordantly on Stephen's ear. Besides being a rough handling of his wounded mind, it seemed to assume that he really was the self-interested deserter he had been called. "What were it, sir," said Stephen, "as yo were pleased to want why me?" "Why, I have told you," returned Bounderby. "Speak up like a man, since you are a man, and tell us about yourself and this combination." "Why ye pardon, sir," said Stephen Blackpool, "I ha noticin about it." Mr. Bounderby, who was always more or less like a wind, finding something in his way here, began to blow at it directly. "Now, look here, Harthouse," said he, "here's a specimen of M. When this man was here once before, I warned this man against the mischievous strangers who are always about, and who ought to be hanged wherever they are found, and I told this man that he was going in the wrong direction. Now, would you believe it, that although they have put this mark upon him, he is such a slave to them still, that he's afraid to open his lips about them? I said as I had noticen, sir, not as I was fearful o' opening my lips." "You said—" "Ah! I know what you said, more than that, I know what you mean, you see. Not always the same thing, by the Lord Harry. Quite different things. You had better tell us at once, that fellow Slackbridge is not in the town, stirring up the people to mutiny, and that he is not a regular qualified leader of the people, that is, a most confounded scoundrel. You had better tell us so at once, you can't deceive me. You want to tell us so. Why don't you?" "I'm as sorry as yo, sir, when the people's leaders is bad," said Stephen, shaking his head. "They tax such as offers. Haply 'tis now the smas do their misfortunes when they can get no better." The wind began to get boisterous. "Now, you'll think this pretty well, Harthouse," said Mr. Bounderby. "You'll think this tolerably strong. You'll say, upon my soul this is a tidy specimen of what my friends have to deal with, but this is nothing, sir. You shall hear me ask this man a question. Pray, Mr. Blackpool, wind springing up very fast, may I take the liberty of asking you how it happens that you refuse to be in this combination? How tea happens?" "Ah," said Mr. Bounderby, with his thumbs in the arms of his coat, and jerking his head and shutting his eyes in confidence with the opposite wall, "how it happens. I'd liefer not come to tea, sir, but sin you put th question and not want nt be you'll manner an, I'll answer. I ha passed a promise." "Not to me, you know," said Bounderby. "Gusty weather with deceitful calms. One now prevailing." "Oh no, sir. Not to yo." "As for me, any consideration for me has had just nothing at all to do with it," said Bounderby, still in confidence with the wall. "If only Josiah Bounderby of Coketown had been in question, you would have joined and made no bones about it?" "Why yes, sir. 'Tis true." "Though he knows," said Mr. Bounderby, now blowing a gale, "that there are a set of rascals and rebels whom transportation is too good for. Now, Mr. Harthouse, you have been knocking about in the world some time. Did you ever meet with anything like that man out of this blessed country?" And Mr. Bounderby pointed him out for inspection, with an angry finger. "Nay, ma'am," said Stephen Blackpool, staunchly protesting against the words that had been used, and instinctively addressing himself to Louisa, after glancing at her face. "Not rebels, nor yet rascals. Nout oth kind, ma'am, nout oth kind. They've not doen me a kindness, ma'am, as I know and feel. But there's not a dozen men among 'em, ma'am, a dozen? Not 6, but what believes as he has doen his duty by the rest and by himseln. God forbid as I, that ha' known, and had an experience of these men all my life, that ha' eaten in and drunken ym, and seat in ym, and toil in ym, and love in him, should fail fur to stand by him why the truth, let 'em ha' doen to me what they may." He spoke with the rugged earnestness of his place and character, deepened perhaps by a proud consciousness that he was faithful to his class under all their mistrust, but he fully remembered where he was, and did not even raise his voice. "No, ma'am, no. They're true to one another, faithful to one another, affectionate to one another, e'en to death. Be poor among 'em, be sick among 'em, grieve among 'em for any oth many causes that carries grief to the poor man's door, and they'll be tender wide yo, gentle wide yo, comfortable wide yo, christen wide yo. Be sure o' that, ma'am. They'd be riven to bits, ere ever they'd be different." "In short," said Mr. Bounderby, "it's because they are so full of virtues that they have turned you adrift. Go through with it while you are about it. Out with it." "How 'tis, ma'am," resumed Stephen, appearing still to find his natural refuge in Louisa's face, "that what is best in us folk seems to turn us most to trouble and misfortune and mistake, I dunno. But 'tis so. I know 'tis, as I know the heavens is over me a hint the smoke. We're patient too, and wants in general to do right. And I canna think the fault is awy us." "Now, my friend," said Mr. Bounderby, whom he could not have exasperated more, quite unconscious of it though he was, than by seeming to appeal to anyone else, "if you will favor me with your attention for half a minute, I should like to have a word or two with you. You said just now that you had nothing to tell us about this business. You are quite sure of that before we go any further?" "Sir, I am sure on it. Here's a gentleman from London present." Mr. Bounderby made a backhanded point at Mr. James Harthouse with his thumb, "a Parliament gentleman. I should like him to hear a short bit of dialogue between you and me, instead of taking the substance of it, for I know precious well, beforehand, what it will be. Nobody knows better than I do. Take notice, instead of receiving it on trust from my mouth." Stephen bent his head to the gentleman from London, and showed a rather more troubled mind than usual. He turned his eyes involuntarily to his former refuge, but at a look from that quarter, expressive though instantaneous, he settled them on Mr. Bounderby's face. "Now, what do you complain of?" asked Mr. Bounderby. "I ha' not come here, sir," Stephen reminded him, "to complain. I come for that I were sent for." "What," repeated Mr. Bounderby, folding his arms, "do you people, in a general way, complain of?" Stephen looked at him with some little irresolution for a moment, and then seemed to make up his mind. "Sir, I were never good at showing OT, though I ha' had in my share in feeling OT. 'Deed we are in a muddle, sir. Look round town, so rich as 'tis, and see the numbers o' people as has been broughten into bein' here, fur to weave, and to card, and to piece out a livin', the same one way, somehows, twixt their cradles and their graves. Look how we live, and wheer we live, and in what numbers, and by what chances, and why what sameness, and look how the mills is allus a-goin', and how they never works us no nigher to ony decent object, 'cept in allus, death. Look how you considers of us, and writes of us, and talks of us, and goes up why you deputations to secretaries of state 'bout us, and how you are allus right, and how we are allus wrong, and never had no reason in us sin ever we were born. Look how this ha' growin', sir, bigger and bigger, broader and broader, harder and harder, fro year to year, fro generation unto generation. Who can look on sir, and fairly tell a man 'tis not a muddle? Of course, said Mr. Bounderby. Now perhaps you'll let the gentleman know how you would set this muddle, as you're so fond of calling it, to rights. I don't know, sir. I cannot be expectin' to tea. 'Tis not me as should be looken to for that, sir. 'Tis them as is put ower me, and ower a the rest of us. What do they tack upon themseln, sir, if not to do't? I'll tell you something towards it, at any rate, returned Mr. Bounderby. We will make an example of 6 Slackbridges. We'll indict the blackguards for felony, and get 'em shipped off to penal settlements. Stephen gravely shook his head. Don't tell me we won't, man, said Mr. Bounderby, by this time blowing a hurricane, because we will, I tell you. Sir, returned Stephen, with the quiet confidence of absolute certainty, if yo was tack 100 Slackbridges, as there is, and the number 10 times towed and was sew 'em up in separate sacks, and sink 'em in the deepest ocean as were made ere ever dry land come to be, yo'd leave the muddle just where 'tis. Mischievous strangers, said Stephen, with an anxious smile, when how we not hearn, I am sure, sin ever we can call to mind, mischievous strangers. 'Tis not by them the trouble's made, sir. 'Tis not why them tea commences. I ha no favour for 'em, I ha no reason to favour 'em, but 'tis hopeless and useless to dream o' taking them fro their trade, 'stead o' taking their trade fro them. Ah, that's now about me in this room were here afore I coom, and will be here when I am gone. Put that clock aboard a ship and pack it off to Norfolk Island, and the time will go on just the same. So 'tis why Slackbridge every bit. Reverting for a moment to his former refuge, he observed a cautionary movement of her eyes towards the door. Stepping back, he put his hand upon the lock. But he had not spoken out of his own will and desire, and he felt it in his heart a noble return for his late injurious treatment to be faithful to the last to those who had repudiated him. He stayed to finish what was in his mind. Sir, I canna, why my little learning and my common way, tell the gentleman what will better others, though some working men o' this town could, above my powers, but I can tell him what I know will never do tea. The strong hand will never do tea, victory and triumph will never do tea, agreeing fur to mak one side and nut rally allus and forever right, and t'other side and nut rally allus and forever wrong, will never do tea. Nor yet lettin' alone will never do tea. Let thousands upon thousands alone, a leading the like lives and a fawin' into the like muddle, and they will be as one, and yo will be as on o other, why a black unpassable world betwixt yo, just as long or short a time as sich like misery can last. Not drawin' nigh to folk, with kindness and patience and cheery ways, that so draws nigh to one another in their money troubles, and so cherishes one another in their distresses wide what they need themseln, like, I humbly believe, as no people the gentleman has seen in a his travels can beat, will never do tea till sun turns tea ice. Most rating 'em as so much power, and reg Latin 'em as if they was figures in a sum, or machines, why out loves and likens, why out memories and inclinations, why out souls to weary and souls to hope, when I goes quiet, draggin' on whying 'em as if they'd nowt o' teish kind, and when I goes on quiet, reproachin' 'em for their want o' sich humanly feelin's in their dealin's, why yo, this will never do tea, sir, till God's work is on made. Stephen stood with the open door in his hand, waiting to know if anything more were expected of him. Just stop a moment, said Mr. Bounderby, excessively red in the face. I told you, the last time you were here with a grievance, that you had better turn about and come out of that. And I also told you, if you remember, that I was up to the Gold Spoon lookout. I were not up to tea-missile, sir, I do assure yo. Now it's clear to me, said Mr. Bounderby, that you are one of those chaps who have always got a grievance. And you go about, sowing it and raising crops. That's the business of your life, my friend. Stephen shook his head, mutely protesting that indeed he had other business to do for his life. You are such a waspish, raspyish, ill-conditioned chap, you see, said Mr. Bounderby, that even your own union, the men who know you best, will have nothing to do with you. I never thought those fellows could be right in anything, but I tell you what. I so far go along with them for a novelty, that I'll have nothing to do with you either. Stephen raised his eyes quickly to his face. You can finish off what you're at, said Mr. Bounderby, with a meaning nod, and then go elsewhere. Sir, yo know will, said Stephen expressively, that if I canna get work why yo, I canna get it elsewhere. The reply was, what I know, and what you know, you know. I have no more to say about it. Stephen glanced at Louisa again, but her eyes were raised to his no more, therefore, with a sigh, and saying, barely above his breath, Heaven help us all in this world, he departed.